Okay, we'll start. Welcome to the October 18th meeting of the Voter Assistance Advisory Committee. I'm starting the meeting, which I don't usually, but just to welcome our new chair, Naomi Zatterer. Naomi has been a member of the Campaign Finance Board since February of 2016, and we couldn't be happier to have her be the chair of our Voter Assistance Advisory Committee. I'm going to give you a little bit about her. She is the Associate Executive Director of the Professional Staff Congress at CUNY. She has been in that role since 2008, but she has more than 19 years of experience in union organizing, collective bargaining, and contract administration across a number of fields, including the New York Professional Nurses Union, the National Writers Union, and the Association of Graduate Student Employees. So welcome, Naomi, and we are very happy to have you.
Thank you, Amy, for the introduction. And to the audience, hello, and welcome to tonight's meeting of the Voter Assistance Advisory Committee. As the newly appointed chairperson of the committee, I'm excited to take on this new role and carry forward the important work we're undertaking to improve our elections and encourage participation in the democratic process. I applaud the efforts of my predecessor, Art Chang, who, among many achievements, made sure that technology is at the forefront of everything we do here. I hope to continue in this direction moving forward. As a member of the Campaign Finance Board since February of 2016, I've learned much about the agency's programming, including its voter engagement initiative, NYC Votes, and realize how important we are to the voters of New York City. Right now, we are facing a voter turnout crisis across the country, and especially so right here at the local level. Merely 16% of actively registered Democratic voters participated in NYC's primary elections this past September. Needless to say, our work is cut out for us, though I am deeply encouraged by the strides we are making. Our advertising campaign for the primary election reached more than 225,000 unique visitors to the online voter guide, representing a threefold increase over the number of visitors to the 2013 primary election guide. Astoundingly, 60% of the voter guide traffic was among young people ages 18 to 34, who have historically voted at a far lower rate in local elections than other age groups. On National Voter Registration Day, with the help of partner organizations and committed volunteers, we helped over 3,000 New Yorkers register to vote in a single day of action. And last spring, I accompanied fellow New Yorkers on our annual trip to Albany, where we engaged with state legislators to advocate for efforts that would make the voting booth more accessible to all New Yorkers. With this said, I look forward to addressing the challenges we face and confronting them head-on to improve our democracy. Thank you for your time, and at this point, we'll move on to our next agenda item, which is approval of the minutes from the September 18th, 2017 meeting. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
Well, actually, we don't have a quorum because there's a yes, so I guess we are not able to approve the minutes. We're going to, there's 9 members and there's only 3 members present, so you need 5.
Goodness. Okay.
So we'll table
Good
that.
To know for the future.
Sorry, I'm okay.
Okay.
Madam Chair, if I could interject for a moment, just wanted to welcome you to VAAC. Art was I know you served with him on the board in general, so you know how thoughtful and innovative he is and the commitment he brought to this committee. And as the representative of the public advocate, look forward to serving with you to make our voting process easier, to increase our voter participation, and to make our democracy more meaningful. So look forward to serving with you.
Thank you so much. Likewise. So we will move on to the report of the executive director.
So I'm going to use my time, and we're going to hear from some people later in the program to talk about an issue that I think a lot of people are overlooking. I mean, very few people vote, but in this election, not only will there be on the ballot candidates to be elected for municipal offices, which is vital for people to go out and vote for, but also New Yorkers are going to be asked to vote on 3 statewide ballot referendum. And so I just wanted to talk a little bit about what those are, because just from my anecdotal experience, people don't realize that they're on the ballot. People don't realize, they don't have any idea what they are. I just want to mention to everybody that, remember, when you get your ballot, they will be on the reverse side from the candidates. So make sure you turn it over and vote on those 3 proposals before you finish your voting process. You can check out our voter guide for the text of the question and nonpartisan summary reasons to vote yes and no. Those are nonpartisan reasons that are prepared by our staff from publicly available materials, and those will be in the printed voter guide that everyone should be receiving in the mail shortly. The online voter guide, which is online right now, has those same reasons to vote yes and reasons to vote no that are nonpartisan, but also has statements supporting and opposing from different individuals and organizations from across the state. If anyone who is watching is interested in submitting a statement to support or oppose any of the 3 ballot proposals, they are welcome to do so. There's if you go to the New York City Campaign Finance Board's website, there is a form for you to fill out. You may do so until Friday, October 27th. So as I said, the print voter guide is in the mail. The online guide is with the candidate embedded videos is live. The video voter guide, it will be airing soon. 29th. October 29th will begin airing. And as our new chair said, the voter engagement campaign has begun for the general election. You'll see our brightly colored posters all across the city and in your social media feeds. And remember, if you have any questions about where to vote, if you're eligible to vote, any questions about voting, you can always go and check voting.nyc, which is a one-stop shop to look for voting information. So with that said, I'm just going to talk a little bit about the ballot proposals. The first proposal is asking whether or not there should be a constitutional convention. And, a lot of people have said to me, well, who decided that they should ask this question? And I said the Constitution decided that you should ask this question. In the New York State Constitution, it gives the opportunity every 20 years for voters to decide whether or not there should be a convention held to revise or entirely replace the New York State Constitution. If a majority of voters vote no in November, there will be no convention. If a majority of voters vote yes, then a whole process occurs. First, voters will elect delegates to the Constitutional Convention, and that election will happen in November of 2018. There are 204 delegates, 3 from each state Senate district and 15 at-large statewide delegates. And those delegates, after the election in November of 2018, will assemble in April of 2019 to review the state constitution, to suggest amendments. Delegates can recommend any change to any part of the Constitution, or they can opt to rewrite the entire Constitution. All the delegates will vote on those proposed amendments. Any amendments that are approved by the majority of the delegates will be placed on the ballot for voters to decide after the convention. So they have to, so there's a 3-part yes or no, there's going to be a convention, then you vote on delegates meet, they decide on whether there should be any amendments, then the voters are given an opportunity to decide yes or no on any of those amendments. Amendments that are approved by voters statewide will take effect on January 1st of the year after that election where they're approved, and amendments that are not approved by New Yorkers will not be enacted. So there's so you have a lot of opportunities to weigh in on the Constitutional Convention. That is the first ballot proposal, and if you look on our website, you will see a lot of different people have weighed into that. I think there are actually a lot of events going on tonight about this Constitutional Convention. I think it's probably the proposal that's received the most public attention. The second proposal on the ballot is whether we should allow the complete or partial forfeiture of a public officer's pension if he or she is convicted of a certain type of felony. So currently, the New York State Constitution protects the pensions of public officers even when they've been convicted of a serious crime. If this constitutional amendment is passed, it would allow a court to reduce or revoke a public officer's pension after he or she has been convicted of a felony directly relating to the performance of his or her job. Before that reduction or removal of the pension, the court would hold a hearing to consider the seriousness of the crime and determine whether the loss of the pension would result in a significant hardship for the public officer's dependents. This law, if it was passed, would only apply to crimes that were committed after January 1st, 2018. And the public officers that would be covered under this amendment are elected officials within the state, officials appointed by the governor, managers and chief financial officers of counties, cities, towns, and villages, the heads of state and local government departments, divisions, boards, commissions, bureaus, public benefit corporations, and public authorities, judges and justices of the state court system, and state employees who are designated by law as policymakers. The third, that's me.
Wait,
I'm like, that's me.
Officers covered by this?
It does not appear that, I am not a complete expert in this, but looking at the list of people, police officers do not appear to be covered by this, because I don't believe that they're not considered state employees. I guess state police officers are state employees, but I don't think they're designated as policymakers, and they don't fit into any other category.
Oh, okay.
Perhaps certain officers might, like the leadership.
Yeah, maybe.
But
rank and file.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, I think other civil servants
would have to.
Right.
So it's only people, I think of. The list is people who have significant policy authority. It seems like, decision-making autonomy. The third proposal is authorizing the use of forest preserve land for specific purposes. And as many people know, there is a provision in the New York State Constitution that provides that the Adirondacks and the Catskill parks will be, quote, forever wild, and bans any new development unless it is specifically approved by the state voters through a constitutional amendment. So this constitutional amendment would create two exceptions from the forever wild provision. First, it would create a land bank of up to 250 acres of forest preserve land. A town, village, or county could make a financial contribution to a forest preserve expansion account and apply to the Department of Environmental Conservation to use forest preserve land if it has no viable alternative for the following health and safety reasons. So these are the only reasons they could use this land. It is to address bridge hazards and eliminate dangerous curves or grades on specific highways, relocate, reconstruct, or maintain highways, and the relocation would be limited to within 1 mile of the current road. For water wells within 530 feet of a specified highway to meet drinking quality standards. Second, it would allow bicycle paths and public utility lines to be located within the widths of specified highways that cross forest preserve lands, and the addition of stabilization devices such as guy wires for existing utility poles if no other viable option exists. The amendment requires that such work minimize the removal of trees and vegetation, and it prohibits the construction of any new intrastate gas or oil pipeline that was not approved at the state and local level prior to June 1st, 2016. As part of this proposal, the state will acquire 250 acres to add to the forest preserve to replace land that is placed in that health and safety account, subject to the approval by the legislature. So these are all important proposals. I encourage you to look at the voter guide and to read the reasons to vote yes, reasons to vote no, and to look at the statements that have been submitted by different organizations supporting and opposing this proposals, and of course, make sure that you vote for everything, but especially remember to turn over your ballot and vote, because the last time there were ballot proposals that were on the back, there was a lot of drop off from candidate voting to proposal voting. And while the Board of Elections has added some features to make it obvious that there's something on the back, just always good to remind people to turn that ballot over. And then I guess we'll hear from Anvita.
Good evening, everyone. To add to what Amy has been sharing, in the voter assistance report, I have some members of the staff who are here, and they're members of the community who are also here to continue to talk about the ballot referendums as well. Some of the things that we want to talk about is the work that we're doing internally in terms of ways to promote and to get greater awareness that there are these ballot referendums from a nonpartisan point of view. So part of the work that we're doing, all of our workshops leading up to Election Day, we are educating everyone and informing them of the ballot referendums, letting them know where they can go to get information, and then, of course, who's on the ballot as well. As Amy mentioned, it's in our printed guide, it's in our video voter guide, so all our YouTube programming, as well as the programming that's on the city channels, will also lead voters to voting.nyc and where they can find out more information about the ballot referendums. So we have a very aggressive plan as well that we're doing. It's going to be included in all of our GOTV work. Sean will discuss more of that, but he will also cover areas of our phone banking, our days of action, all of our direct mailing, which Amanda's here also. She can talk about that. So without further ado, as they say, I would invite Sean, if he could please come and talk about the GOTV work we're doing, and then Summer will join him and talk about one of our current programs that are coming up.
Good evening. So as Anita was saying, as we approach the election, we are now in full gear towards our GOTV efforts. Now, we will be doing different methods, and those GOTV methods will include mailings, emails, phone calls, and doors. I would like to focus on my time here on the phone calls and the knocking doors. Since 2014, can you hear me?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, great. Since 2014, NYC Votes has run a nonpartisan Get Out the Vote phone bank, reminding New Yorkers about the importance of voting. This year, we're focusing on reminding people the importance of voting in local elections, reminding them that local elections affect their daily lives. But also this year, aside from just focusing on local elections, we're reminding people and letting people know that there are 3 referendums. This year, New Yorkers will decide whether or not to have a constitutional convention for the first time since 1967. And we've included this in our GOTV script and other methods, which I will explain later. Presently, our GOTV efforts phone bank goes 4 days, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday before the election. Saturday and Sunday, we call 12 to 4, Monday and Tuesday, 4 to 8. That phone banking will take place in this very room. It's turned into a call center where we have the capabilities of having 45 volunteers in here calling at any one time. I'm proud to say right now, 3 out of those 4 days are booked to capacity. Some of the organizations that we will be recruiting from, that we have recruited from, are the Urban Assembly School of Math and Science, streetsquash.org, which is an after-school program, Dalton High School, Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority, Zeta Phi Beta sorority, and also members of the general republic. We use different recruitment websites to attract people, and those websites are Volunteer Match, NYC Service, Idealist.org, and now we are using Nation Builder to reach out and pull people in. The GOTV message will, as I mentioned, talk about the importance of voting, about local elections playing an important role in people's daily lives. We will also inform people of their polling location and their rights, that there is a ballot referendum this year, 3, and then we will be directing voters to voting.nyc, where they'll be able to find out what's on the ballot, where the polling location is, and their rights, and will provide them with information and a link to the voter guide. I'm going to move now towards the doors. We started something back in February of 2016 called A Day of Action. A Day of Action is a community outreach effort focused on providing unbiased information and answering questions to an underserved community with the goal of giving that community a stronger political voice. This October, we will be at Gompers, which is a NYC development on the Lower East Side on October 28th. We are looking to recruit, and we are beginning to recruit, or more than beginning, to recruit about 20 to 30 volunteers to knock doors, to talk to voters, to go to them face-to-face and have a conversation. Again, that conversation will include much the same as our phone conversations about going to vote, the importance of voting, local elections, polling locations, and again, stressing the fact that this year we will decide on whether or not hold a state constitutional convention, which will have a major impact on their lives. So these are things that we are doing. I'd also wanted to touch one other thing, the Nation Builder, and Amanda can talk more about that if she comes up here. But we've already reached out to people, alerting them about the referendums. Starting back in August, we'd reached out and let people know about the questions and through emails. And one of those emails directly focused on the Constitutional Convention. So we are out there, we are calling people, we are mailing people, we are emailing people, we are knocking on their doors, talking about the elections, talking about the referendums, asking them their questions, and we're there for them. And with that, I'd like to finish my report and turn it over to Summer.
Wonderful. Thank you. Hi, my name is Summer Griffin. I am the NYC Votes Youth Voter Coordinator. I am so happy to get to announce today that we will be holding the 2018 NYC Youth Poet Laureate Showcase on Saturday, November 11th. It will be held at the Schomburg Center for Research in Black Culture. This is a holiday weekend, which works very well for our youth participants, and we are happy to get to extend an invitation to you all today. During the showcase, the 15 finalists will perform their poems on voting, and the 2018 Youth Poet Laureate will be announced. I'm also happy to announce that this year, each of those 15 YPL finalists will be participating or are participating in a fellowship provided through partnership with Urban Word NYC and Federal Hall. This fellowship is taking place during the month of October, and it provides an opportunity for this group of truly brilliant young people to write, work, and have dialogue with one another during the weeks leading up to the showcase on November 11th. The fellowship consists of 2 workshops per week. The workshops are on civic engagement, voting, and poetry, and are provided by an Urban Word NYC facilitator as well as myself. The workshops are taking place actually at Federal Hall, which is the site of George Washington's inauguration as the first president of the United States. So with this backdrop, it's a really exciting backdrop, really it's the birthplace of American government. The fellows are getting this opportunity to dive into what it means to be civically engaged with one another and what it means to be a leader in voting. They're also getting to build a community with one another in a setting that will encourage continuous involvement and inspire dialogue. So through this program, we're not only naming one Youth Poet Laureate, but we're really building a cohort of passionate leaders who can use their art to inspire other young people to find their voice and to have their voice heard. Beginning in 2018, the chosen Youth Poet Laureate will have over 20 public appearances where they are performing and speaking and encouraging their peers to register to vote and to vote. So again, I'm so excited to get to announce this program to you all and to extend that invitation. Thank you.
That's great. You should definitely tell John Avalon, after he just did that incredible seminal work on President Washington, about this opportunity. So I'm sure John would love to be involved. I've enlisted him in his absence.
So I guess one question, Amanda, did you have something to add about our mail campaign, or we'll just let you talk for a minute and we'll go to because you weren't on the formal agenda, but you're here, so.
Hi, my name's Amanda Malillo of the Campaign Finance Board. Very quickly, just to talk a little bit about our GOTV mailings. Something we are trying out this year. In the past, we've done some experimentation to see if sending out GOTV mailings to voters can nudge them to vote. So we do this through experimental field design, where we use controlled trials, and we're doing this on a much bigger scale than we have done before. So this year, we're focusing on 9 of the lowest turnout neighborhoods in New York City, and specifically targeting voters under the age of 40. Those are 2 neighborhoods in each of the boroughs, with the exception of Staten Island, where we're focusing on 1 neighborhood. So we are targeting voters under 40 because they typically have the lowest turnout rates in citywide elections. And what we are trying out this time, because in the past we've done mailings, but this time in addition to that, we're testing out leaving door hangers on people's doors. So we split voters into one of 4 groups. One group will get a postcard, one group will get a door hanger, one group will get both, one group will get neither. And we will see if these additional points of contact make any difference in that turnout rate. All voters, of course, are hearing from us through the voter guide, who we mail to everybody. All voters are seeing the ad campaign that you've probably seen all over the subways and buses and in outdoors and on social media. But we're just determining if these additional points might influence people at all. And we're also giving them an additional opportunity to opt in to receive email communications from us, including election alerts. So that's something we advertised in the voter guide as well. And as Sean mentioned, we are using that to get the word out about not only candidates who we feature in the voter guide, but also about these ballot proposals. We're letting people know about upcoming dates and deadlines, et cetera. So I think that's my overview of what we're doing on the mailings, but I'm happy to take any additional questions.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the public testimony. So we'll begin with the testimony on participatory budgeting.
Okay. Yep, come there and yeah, and then I guess give your name and your affiliation and.
All right, ladies first.
Hi, I'm Sonia Reynolds. I'm the data director for the New York State Civic Engagement Table, but I'm here today on behalf of we just changed our name, so forgive me, I'm going to use the wrong name half the time, at least, for the participatory budgeting citywide committees. I'm their co-chair.
Hi, my name is Andre Garrett, and I'm a newly member of the Participatory Budgeting Citywide Committee.
Yeah. You need an acronym.
Happy to be here. So I guess I believe we were invited to talk a little bit about PB, the PB process, and talk with a few people earlier. I feel there could be some great synergy in what PB has already strived to do and what NYC Votes is planning to do. And so for those that aren't aware, either here or watching via streaming, the PB process basically started in Brazil some years ago. It has basically 3 general basic steps. One is community members identify spending priorities and select budget delegates. Budget delegates develop specific spending proposals with help from experts. Community members vote on which proposals to fund. The city or institution implements the top proposals. And basically it was implemented in Brazil basically to give marginalized communities and low-income people that weren't already engaged in the process of voting say in how monies were being spent in their community. I've been involved with the process myself for about 3 years, first just as a participant in the community, then as a budget delegate, and then as a facilitator. And I can tell you firsthand, it does lend itself to some empowerment that you see how you can have a say in how money is being spent directly in your community. And it does provide for overall community engagement. And so part of the continuing efforts of PB is to gain more traction within low-income and marginalized communities and people in the peripheral, and have an understanding how their voice can directly impact how dollars are being spent.
That was great. I'll just add a couple other things. I joined the citywide committee, which was called the steering committee until this year, 4 cycles ago, and I've been the co-chair now. This is my 2nd cycle. I think the things that we really wanted to lift up are that we feel like PB is one of the most innovative democratic processes of the city. It's more inclusive than our standard voting process is. You don't have to be a citizen. This cycle you only have to be either 11 or in 6th grade to participate. So it's like a much bigger umbrella than our normal voting process is. What else do we want to say?
The overall process allows citizens to engage in conversation and discussion about what's important in their community, and actually help develop proposals that are then developed with expertise from city agencies to define what is the best way to move forward and which actual proposals go up for the vote in the spring of the following year. Yes.
Okay. Can you also just explain how working with elected officials, predominantly city council members, and also what the financial dollar amounts are as far as how this works and the timing of it and all, because it really is a wonderful opportunity for especially young people to get involved.
Yes.
Cool. As far as dollars work, I'll answer that first. Is so the city council members use their member items. And so each city council person has a different number of dollars depending on the need of their district, and that is between $1 and $2 million per cycle. And then that's fiscal cycle. So we're right in the beginning now, and we're collecting ideas from the community now, and we're just moving into the phase of developing the ideas. What was the other question?
You kind of articulated just the process of the timeline.
Yeah, so exactly. The timing's just starting the idea phase, which just ending this week, and then we're going into the proposal development budget delegate phase, which is where they make decisions about whether all the proposals, which ones are viable, work with the city agencies, which ones provide equity. We added an equity metric to our proposal development guidelines to make sure that our projects are providing the equity that we hope that they do.
And how can people find out how they can be involved in these?
pbnyc.org.
So, if you go to, they can find out where in their council district. It's done by council district, right? So you can find which council district you're in. You can look on, if you're not sure which council district you're in, you can go to voting.nyc to see which council district you're in. Or I guess assume you have that. It's the same Met thing. And then you can figure out, you can go to the meetings. They have the schedule of the meetings.
You can join your district committee. You could just sign up to volunteer online. So, for example, we did SMS outreach this week to collect ideas directly from community members who live in low-income census tracts. So I pulled from that volunteer list. So if you put your name on that list, I will call you and you can come volunteer for us and direct SMS outreach. Or join the district committee.
Right.
So does that mean you still have 2 more days if you want to submit ideas?
You can't submit ideas anymore online. That ended on Friday.
Oh, last Friday.
But we're just because the facilitator trainings are this week. We have a little bit of time before they're actually going to look at the list. So that's why we're doing this added week.
Are all city council members now participating?
No, only 29 out of 51. It started as 4, so this actually is a really big jump from our first year. So it's 29 last cycle. It was 32, and we went down to 29.
Right.
You collect ideas online?
Mm-hmm.
Online?
You collect ideas offline, I'm sure. How do you do that?
Basically, there are community meetings actually in the beginning of the process. Most districts have something we call a summit. District 3 had one down at the High Line where all members of the community could come and they explain what the PB process is. They're giving the categories upon which projects can be lumped together, and they actually sit down right at that particular summit to come up with different ideas, in addition to being able to put ideas up online. And as far as though that part of that process is closed now, citizens still can get involved and attend the upcoming committee meetings by category and suggest additional ideas. So ideas are not closed off completely as of yet. So there's still definitely time to get involved with the process.
Thank you.
I know that Summer has been working a little bit with you. Do you want to discuss that, Summer? If you want, you can come here.
Wonderful. Hello. Yes. So we have had a little bit of conversation about how we can work together as far as youth programming goes. And so that's where it's kind of started, and what we're working off of now is, first off, how we can include this as a way to empower the youth that I come in contact with through workshops and other ways. Additionally, I know there's a fellowship program for youth through participatory budgeting. So we've talked about how we can make sure that they're getting, if there's any additional training that we can provide from NYC Votes for those fellowship, those youth involved in the fellowship, as well as a conversation about how we can help to get more youth involved in the committee process and in the idea submitting.
Yeah, because I feel it's a really good training ground, in particular from the youth and the fellowship program that we have involved, because it's actually their direct expertise and how a lot of projects are being shaped and formed within the community, in particular a lot of projects that have to do with the schools. And since they're living and breathing that every day, they're actually the best people to come in and give us what they really need, right? And so if there's any synergy that we can collaborate, get engagement with New York City Votes, I think it'll be a win-win for both PBNYC and for NYC Votes.
I was just wondering, can you give some examples of projects that have been funded this way? I think I read I get all the mailings, so I know, but I think it would be interesting for the people to hear, like, what kinds of things have been funded.
Well, this is my favorite only because it doesn't actually follow the normal PB structure, because Brad Lander actually so PB is usually capital projects. Brad Lander does a discretionary program. I can't remember what the budget type is called, but one of the program budget things that passed this last cycle was mobile showers at the soup kitchen on 4th Avenue. So for the homeless to have a place to shower. So that's
You know what you should do for the purposes of this live stream? You should say what capital projects are. I know
sure.
Most people don't
capital
know
projects are infrastructure projects, and there are specific there are constraints for participatory budgeting projects that it should last at least 5 years.
Yes.
Is the biggest one that pulls out a bunch of projects that people are really excited about. So it's what are the other big constraints that you can think of? I think it has to be under $250,000 because we want to be able to fund more than one project with the $1 million to $2 million. What are the other big ones? Time clock. Bus time clocks are a good example. New playground equipment, ACs in schools. That's a really big. Sorry, I don't want to cut you off. Go.
Computer labs in schools is another example. Broken water fountains. Unfortunately, we have to. I couldn't believe we were paying. Anyway, so water fountains. Sherry mentioned HVAC, but this year the HVAC was transferred.
And exactly, that's a really good example of how participatory budgeting was bubbling up this issue of ACs in schools. ACs in schools, that was coming up so much that the Department of Education is we're going to do this in every school. This is clearly such a problem.
You'll be surprised with
everybody else is looking.
I'm sure they'd heard, but it just made it so obvious.
Yeah.
My school got pretty hot.
I will add that one of the reasons why it's so important for us as well, this synergy here, is because a lot of the work that Amanda's doing is based on what relationships we create. So the relationships that we create here, we're able to really leverage to make sure that we continue to stay in contact with New Yorkers and our youngest New Yorkers as well. So as we're building the new generation, that the messaging is going out consistently. So we're really working hard at this here.
Well, and I think, Amanda presented, I guess not at the last meeting or maybe the meeting before, the results of our project to do, to figure out what kind of messaging what people needed to know why they weren't voting. And one of the things that we heard over and over again is that they just didn't know what municipal officers do. And so being part of this kind of level, of involvement really gets you involved in understanding how important municipal government is to your daily life, and just knowing the difference between capital budgeting and, and program budgeting and what that means and how it gets played out is really important.
Right. And I think also understanding the process, because part of the process is being able to meet with these city agencies themselves to get a really defined look at what are some of the constraints, in trying to move certain projects forward, and also what projects they may already have under their own capital budgets that do not need to be under PB. Mm-hmm. So it's a win-win.
Often happens in an agency meeting where I think you feel like as a resident, you're like, nobody's thinking about my park, and then you get to meet with the Parks Department person who's like, I know that park. We're going to redo the whole park in the next 5 years. Let's not even bother with that park because your thing's going to get pulled down. Let's think about that one that's around the corner. And it can be disempowering, can feel disempowering, but actually more empowering, even if the news isn't good news. I think the last thing I really wanted to bring up is I'm also part of the North American Research Board for Participatory Budgeting in North America. And one of the projects we're working on is research on whether participation in participatory budgeting carries over to more participation in regular elections. So we'll be presenting on that by March of next year. We'll have a report on what the spillover effects are between participatory budgeting and regular election participation. Traditional election participation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
That's wonderful. Yeah.
So more to come.
Mm-hmm.
Any questions?
Thank you so much for your testimony.
Do you have ideas of how we could overlap? What could we do to make sure that we're closing this loop? Do you have, or think about it and let us know?
Yeah. I think for us, it would be definitely to get engaged with Amanda and also Sumner, maybe even invite them to one of our committee meetings, to have a better understanding of exactly what you guys are doing to try to engage, and actually understanding some of the previous research that was done of why voters do not vote. I think that'd be very helpful to our process as well as we try to put in different efforts for increasing engagement in PB.
I don't want to step in on any toes here, but I think it would also be possible with all these young people who are going to be coming here in this room to do get out the vote activities. If you guys have any presentations or any materials where you could talk to these students come from all over the city to say, maybe your council member has this opportunity. If they're here, they're already thinking about it, about being involved. So that might get them hooked into another way of it not just being an abstract thing and, okay, well, maybe hopefully somebody will come up and vote. But this is actually a process that they could help formulate and be involved in and then see the tangible results of their efforts. It's a borrow a baseball analogy. It's about hitting singles and occasionally a double, but that builds, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think if they start seeing that and they get ingrained in that, when they get older, then they'll be more active citizens in their communities and in their neighborhoods.
It might be a good idea to get some of our PB fellows to come in.
You mean for the 4 days that Sean is running the GOTV, or do you mean summer's youth that are here? What do you mean when they're here?
I think that both of those are an option.
Okay.
And yeah, absolutely. I think both of those are an opportunity. And that's definitely something that I've been thinking about and we've been thinking about and communicating with Melissa from PB, how we can include that. One of the things I'll add is, is we work on this nation builder messaging and how to really engage people, especially young people. We've found that giving them action, giving them something to do, is and sometimes the best way to do that. And so I think that that's really the great connection between participatory budgeting and the work that we do and getting them engaged civically in general and in voting. It's so empowering, like you were saying. It's just giving them that action. You can do this now. Again, there's all of these things that say, are you old enough? Are you a citizen? All that. Everyone can be engaged in this, and it's that step.
And after tonight, PB doesn't mean peanut butter.
I I don't even hear it anymore. So welcome.
You're
Cool.
welcome.
Thanks so much.
And the final item on our agenda tonight is public testimony on the ballot questions. Is there?
Oh, yeah.
Hi, everybody. My name is Al Benninghoff. I'm here for the Committee for a Constitutional Convention. We are a ballot issue committee that was formed specifically around the first question on the ballot this year, whether or not to have a constitutional convention. We are vociferously in favor. We are made up of over 100 prominent New Yorkers from across the state. It includes individuals like former Governor David Patterson, former Lieutenant Governor Stan Lundeen, former Lieutenant Governor Richard Ravitch, former Public Advocate Betsy Gottbaum, and others, and is chaired by former counsel to Mario Cuomo, Evan Davis. We're in favor of a constitutional convention for a lot of the same reasons, or because of a lot of the things that that you guys are advocating for, and that is to get more voters to participate in the process. I'm not going to tell you anything new in this, but New York City is half of the state of New York by population, but by voter registration we're just over 40%, and by voter participation, at least in municipal elections like this year, typically it's just over a third. That hurts because it's disempowering to the city. And we think that having a constitutional convention to take a serious look at voter participation rules, ethics rules, and others would be a tremendous opportunity for us to do something other than the incredible work that all of you are doing to increase voter participation from the other end, to look at some of the rules that might be restrictive in voter participation. Because quite frankly, some other states are surpassing us by leaps and bounds in including voters, in doing mail-in ballots, or in doing same-day voter registration, or other things. And maybe we take a look at those things and they don't make sense for New York. But at least under the existing structure of our legislative amendments to our constitutional process, we're not having any of those discussions. And that's really what this comes down to, is that we want to have exactly what the question says. We want to have a meeting in Albany by a bunch of people to take a serious look at our Constitution and propose changes to the people. We have a couple of concerns about this, and I was so enthused by Ms. Loprest, your reading off of the procedure that would kick off if we were to get a yes vote, because it was great without revealing any side or anything. It was wonderful and informative. But unfortunately, I think a lot of voters aren't informed about it. It's a tremendously dense thing, and it's certainly something that we have been struggling with in trying to get information out to voters. And I know that you're doing a lot of incredible work to inform voters, and that's amazing and very inspirational to me to hear about. But the density of the subject matter is one that I think a lot of voters are going to have questions about when they come to the polls, and it's something that concerns us. Another thing is the fact that there is some confusion, at least we've experienced it as I've gone around the state and talked to voters, is that there's some confusion about whether or not this is akin to any of the national push for some sort of constitutional convention. And at least in the question as it's written, it's not evident. It just says convention to amend the Constitution. So, that's something that we are also concerned about. The back of the ballot is another thing, and I'm sure you've heard and addressed this as well. But, Evan Davis, who chairs the committee, had actually sued the Board of Elections in order to try and change the thing. It was ultimately unsuccessful. But at least having the additional items to alert voters to turn over the ballot is certainly helpful. And then last, and certainly not least, is some sort of reminder to the voters, and that gets into the density of the Constitutional Convention subject matter, but some sort of reminder to the voters that they're included in the process through each of the three steps of whether or not to have the Constitutional Convention in the first place, on the delegates themselves, and then finally on any proposals to the Constitution that would come out of a Constitutional Convention. We think that not only the city, but also the state stands to gain a lot by having a constitutional convention. We haven't had one, as you had mentioned, for the past 50 years. There are a lot of rules that could stand considerable change. There are pages and pages devoted to the highest issue the last time we had a constitutional convention in 1938, which was sewer drainage. Horse manure was a tremendous issue back 80 years ago. Not such a tremendous issue, at least in New York City today. Major issues that are of importance to the city today is education, our mass transit system, the environment, internet and privacy rights, which didn't exist last time we had a constitutional convention, and a variety of other things. And as the committee, we're advocating, obviously, for very specific positions on a few issues, but ultimately what it comes down to is we want New York to have the ability to have the conversation because we think that would be an empowering process and what greater opportunity to have a massive civics education in how our state functions than a constitutional convention process. If we were to have one, it would be the first one by any state in the 21st century, which means it's a tremendous opportunity for New York to lead not only on the issues that could be advocated for, but in the process itself. And with the advent of technology, and I know that the former chairperson, Art Cheng, has been a tremendous proponent of technology and people's inclusion, or the empowerment of the ability to include people in the process, we think that New York could set a national example for that as well. I am welcome and available to any questions that anybody has, but I am sure that this has been discussed vociferously also within the committee, so I don't know if there are any.
I have a question. Do you have materials? Because, I haven't made up my mind, I'll be honest with you on this question, because there's some issues in the Constitution that I don't think the Constitutional Convention may put at risk.
Yes, I do.
Like, for example, the clause for the protection of the needy and other clauses that are very expansive in the New York State Constitution. So do you have materials that you're giving out about these things?
I do, and I'd be happy to give you one. We had a paper published, and I've been doing campaigns a long time, and usually if anybody were to ever recommend to me to publish a paper on an issue, I would say no. But this subject matter was so dense, not only in process and procedure, but in opportunity and the thick density of our Constitution in and of itself. It's 56,000 words. We felt it necessary to produce such a thing. I'd be happy to give you some. I don't have many, but I have some. And on that subject specifically about the care for the needy provision, Liz Kruger was on WNYC just yesterday talking about this because she used to, State Senator Liz Kruger. Who was arguing in favor in a debate that WNYC had produced, and she used to use the clause to care for the needy in her work in the private sector before she became a state elected official. And at least from her position, and I'm paraphrasing here based on what she said yesterday on the radio, now that she's seen the underbelly of Albany and gotten a chance to participate in it, she sees exactly how bad it is and wants to change the system. And she doesn't feel that there would be any risk to that.
I guess just for the viewers, and I guess I sometimes is there. I mean, this happens every 20 years, so I guess maybe if we could just. I mean, I know So 20 years ago, in 1997, there was a proposal on the ballot to whether we should have a constitutional convention, and that was there was no. There was no constitutional convention in 97, but there was one in 77. Am I correct?
67. No.
67. I'm sorry, I can't add. Sorry.
Yeah.
67.
No, you're
they changed. No, it doesn't add up. It doesn't. It is every 20.
Math doesn't add up.
I was like, okay, I'm not crazy. Okay. I'm a lawyer and not a mathematician, and I'm like, even though I have a degree in finance, I should probably be able to. I can do math in my head, and now I realize that there doesn't add up.
It adds to that whole thing. Yeah, people are like, what is this? So over the course of New York's history, we've had 9 constitutional conventions. It used to be something we did a lot. Sorry. SUNY professor Jerry Benjamin, who's gone across the state, and he's the foremost expert on the state constitution, likes to say that we used to do it very frequently. Back in the 1700s, when we had the first, New York was one of the first to introduce its own state constitution. As a matter of fact, that first constitutional convention was evading the British, and so they met in various cities across the state to avoid detection. But in the 1800s, we had them very frequently, almost every 20 years. In the 1900s, we didn't so much. We had one in 1938. We didn't for a while, and then we had one in 1967, and then we haven't had one since. The reason it doesn't add up is because the 1967 convention was actually called by the legislature. So in addition to us voting on it every 20 years, the legislature can call one whenever it wants to, and it hasn't, except for the one in 1967. Because of the rules of the way that they did it, the legislature actually exerted a lot of control over the process. We feel that because this would be sort of a public outcry and this, I'm not revealing any secrets here, but since a lot of the legislature has opposed the idea of having a constitutional convention, and for good reason, a constitutional convention stands to rob them of a lot of the power that they have, that we would actually, it would be the public's opportunity to oppose the will, I guess, in some sense, of the legislature and exert some sort of renewed control, at least, over the elected officials.
How many members of the state legislature are in favor of the Constitutional Convention publicly?
I'm actually not sure of a vote. I can name a couple of individuals, but I can also attest to the fact that there has been a very public pressure campaign to silence a lot of them.
Like, there has been a public pressure campaign to silence by who?
By the legislative leadership, by a lot of the most powerful donors in the state, and by others. I mean, it was reported recently in a couple of publications even that New York City police cars were driving around with Vote No stickers on their bumpers, and that it's been posted publicly in courthouses across the city, Vote No on the Constitutional Convention. It's a problem.
Well, thank you. I mean,
Thank you.
everybody can read the voter guide and, make their, read people's pros and cons and make, their own informed decision based on.
And I would think another suggestion would be, I mean, unfortunately, I have had to read large sections of the New York State Constitution, but you should read the section of the Constitution that are of interest to you so you can see what he's talking about. I mean, or get some sense of what they're talking about.
Maybe Mr. Benhoff, you could say is there a website associated with your organization so that people can look at that? Obviously, it's on one side, but
it does. There's a link to the state constitution on our website. You can find it at NY Says Yes. That's the letter N, Y for New York, saysyes.org. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No.
It could be enacted in the legislature.
It could be. They could enact in legislature.
It could just be done through through the regular amendment process.
Yes.
Or actually through legislation. It doesn't even require. Yeah.
It's statutory, so
Yeah.
it could be done.
Yeah.
Yes.
We're going to sign you up to go every year to Albany to change the yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
I'll give colleagues here. Are you mailing these to people's homes? Because I haven't gotten it.
We're doing as much as we can.
Oh. Maybe.
Okay.
Oh, actually, I think one other interesting point is that there's public financing, right, for the election of the delegates. Isn't there?
Not currently.
No.
Since we haven't done this since 1967, none of the rules specifically around the delegates has been updated in the last 50 years.
Oh.
So we expect that if there is when there is a yes vote on the Constitutional Convention, that there will be a lot of debate and passage of rules specifically around the delegate election process. But as it stands currently, most of the rules that pertain to voting state senators would pertain to voting of delegates for the 189 that would be elected through the state senate districts, and then any of the rules that pertain to electing statewide elected officials would apply to the 15 statewide delegates that would be elected.
Oh, thank you. Do we need a motion to adjourn, or is there any
I
other
mean, is
business?
anyone else
Is there any
want
other?
to testify? Okay.
I think everybody had an opportunity to speak. So,
Very participatory. We're very participatory.
yeah, this is
Art always
a
has a
perfect
sit in a
model.
circle.
You know, Chase has it set me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, you didn't have an opportunity to speak.
Oh, Catherine didn't speak
Kathleen,
either. She'll forget. Okay. Well,
All right. Well, thank you very much. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So.
All in favor? We are adjourned.